their own head. You gotta resist those goddamn things, because they don't do you any good, and they certainly define the potential for your future in a negative way. It's not self-serving, and it's not even real. This idea that there's no way to get past the starting block today is just ludicrous. It's crazy. And it's just this poor thinking. And people that are trapped in bad situations, one of the problems is you feel like this is your future. You feel like you're fucked. You can't get out of that. There's no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no rainbow. And if you feel like that, that alone can be incredibly defining and limiting. But if you look at yourself objectively and say, I kinda am fucked here. I'm in credit card debt, working in a shitty job, I don't like what I'm doing, but I have some ideas. I need to feed those fucking ideas. I need to feed them and water them. I need to set aside a certain amount of time every day to just try to make those things happen every day. To just try to make those things happen every day. To just try to make those things happen every day. You can do that. Do shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult every day. You can do that. Do shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult. It's very important to struggle. You look at someone who's doing really well, or very famous and successful. All you see is him now, flying around private jets, wearing a new pair of sneakers every day, driving around in Bentleys. You just see that. You don't see him being a young kid in Philadelphia going to open mic nights. There's a progression that you're not witness to. You don't see it. And that takes place in everything. It takes place in office, in comedians and musicians. There is a starting point, and with time and focus, and long as you reevaluate and reassess and constantly, objectively look at what you're doing and then pursue it with passion and focus, you get better at things. There's always going to be people that are luckier than you. Some of it is luck, and some of it is courage. Some of it is putting your ass out there. Some of it is trying things. One of the things that I always like to tell people that I think you should do is do shit that's difficult. It's very important to struggle. Do shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult every day. You can do that. Do shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult. It's very important to struggle. Teaches you things you don't learn from success. I think failure gives you an opportunity for self-examination and also gives you a feeling that is very uncomfortable. And that very uncomfortable feeling helps you grow. And don't look at these failures as proof that you suck. Look at them as opportunities for growth. And don't look at these failures as proof that you suck. Look at them as opportunities to be motivated to do better. Shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult every day. You can do that. Do shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult. It's very important to struggle. Do shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult every day. You can do that. Do shit that's difficult every day, every day. Do shit that's difficult. It's very important to struggle.
do drugs when they could just mow a lawn? Why would anyone do drugs when they could just mow a lawn? Why would anyone do drugs when they could just mow a lawn?
piece of work by Jung a long while back. It was a meditation on the injunction to treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. And what Jung pointed out, which I really liked, was that wasn't an injunction to be nice to other people. It was an invitation to reciprocity. It was something like this. It's like, I read this piece of work by Jung a long while back. It was a meditation on the injunction to treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. And what Jung pointed out, which I really liked, was that wasn't an injunction to be nice to other people. It was an invitation to reciprocity. It was something like this. It's like, you should figure out how you would like to be treated, like you were taking care of yourself, not how you would like people to respond to you. It's more important than that. It's like, imagine you had a child that you really cared for, and someone said, well, people will treat this child exactly like you want them to, but you have to figure out what that is. And so then you'd have to sit down for like a month and you'd think, okay, well, how do you want your child to be treated? You don't want everyone just to be nice to him, you know. You want people to challenge him, and you want people to discipline him, and you want people to tell him when he's wrong. It's like, you don't just want everyone to be nice. That's pathetic. It's pathetic. There's no challenge in that. There's no challenge in that. Human beings are self-conscious, and we know about our limitations, and we know about our weaknesses. And so we can have contempt for human beings in general, because, you know, we're just flawed and breakable and all of that. But we know ourselves better than we know everyone else. And so you have a very acute sense of how you're not up to scratch, and so that leads naturally to a sort of self-contemptuous attitude. People are more likely to give prescription medication to their pets than to take them themselves. Imagine someone that you treat well, that you love, and try to treat yourself that way. You got to detach from yourself there. You got to think, okay, well, I'm a person among other people, and I deserve at least as much respect as a person among other people. I should be trying to help myself across time. And instead of being self-contemptuous and self-destructive, I need to take care of myself as if I'm potentially valuable, and to lay out my life that way. It's hard for people. They don't take care of themselves as well as they should. Take care of your things, like have some respect for yourself as a miraculous being, because that is actually what you are. There is a lot of potential within you. You're necessary more than you think to the unfolding of things. That's the thing about being an individual. It's the thing that Western civilization has always recognized, that as an individual, you have a light that you have to bring into the world, and that if you don't bring it into the world is a dimmer place, and that's a bad thing, because when the world is a dim place, it can get very, very, very dark. Clinical psychologist, and I've spent 20 hours a week for 25 years listening to people tell me about their lives. And those people were people who were just barely hanging on to the bottom of the world, up to people who were so successful you could hardly believe it. Being a clinical psychologist, if you really listen, is like being immersed in a Dostoevsky novel all the time, you know, because it's amazing what people tell you if you listen to them, because they're so peculiar. Like, they're like penguins or rhinoceroses or ostriches. They're unlikely creatures. Well, you got to improve, right? And you might think, well, I'm a real fixer-upper, and I'm really embarrassed about that because there's 50 things wrong with me, and like, look at that guy, and so now I feel all terrible because of the comparison and all of that. First of all, it's unfair, especially by the time you're about 30. Your life has become quite idiosyncratic. Let's say your life has 8 dimensions: family, friends, intimate relationships. You're individually positioned in all those dimensions. Your life isn't like anyone else's life. So you see someone who's doing better than you, it's like you're only seeing one dimension at one slice of time. So it's not reasonable. You don't have the whole picture. And then you get down on yourself and take the spirit out of yourself, and you get bitter and resentful. There's nothing good about that. But you do need to improve. There's not as much of you as there should be. So what's the comparison? Well, that's easy. Just say, okay, well, here's my position in time and space right now. Here's my virtues and fault. I can be a little bit better tomorrow in some minor way. Well, that's the right comparison, because you are very much like you. Everything's the same about you. Everything's the same about you. And so it's the perfect comparison. You just don't have insight into the tragedy of someone else's life. You might think, well, he's rich and successful. It's like, yeah, but you just don't know. You don't know what his relationship is with his wife or his children. You know, you don't know that he's gone through 2 divorces and his daughter won't talk to him and one of his kids is schizophrenic. And the point is, you should be better than you are, but it's not because you're worse than other people. It's because you're not everything you should be. And so you got to pick the comparison right. And then that's also ennobling and instantly hopeful. There is absolutely no doubt that you can be slightly better tomorrow than you are today. There is definitely something that you can do today that will make you slightly better for the next day. Always. Okay. You're 85, you have Alzheimer's, you know, you're done. Sometimes you're done. Most of the time you're not, and most of the time there's something within your grasp that you could put right. See, that's the fundamental issue. It's like life is tragic. It's full of suffering and it's full of malevolence. There's no doubt about that. And it's brutal. It's more brutal than you can even imagine in some ways, or willing to imagine. But there's something you could put right. And we don't know what would happen if you put everything you could right, if you put it right. And then we don't know what would happen if everyone did that. But you can be certain that it would be less tragic and less malevolent. And so, like, you don't have anything better to do. Well, there's plenty of things to criticize about being. It's tragic, and there's malevolence. That's basically the issue. And you can complain about that, but the thing is, if you complain about that, if you adopt that attitude, which is sort of an anti-being attitude, you go places that if you knew you were going, you probably wouldn't want to go. It's the places where, like, the kids that shot up Columbine went. Those are bad places. If you read the writings of the Columbine high school kids, and you really read them, if they don't make the hair stand up in the back of your neck, you are not paying attention. Like, one kid wrote things, I cannot believe that people could write. And I've exposed myself to a lot of crazy things that people have done and said. You just can't understand it. It's uncanny, you know. Well, that's where you end up if you get bitter. It's like, well, what can you do about that? Well, the world is harsh. It's like, should you criticize it? Not until you put yourself together. You got to bring everything you can to bear on the problem before you have any right to stand in judgment about being itself. And that's what these mass murderers do. That's what they're doing. That's what they're acting out. They're saying, well, I'm looking out in the world. I don't like people. They're full of flaws. They act badly. They're a cancer on the face of the planet. It'd be better if they didn't exist at all. I don't like being. It's too full of suffering and evil. I'm the judge of this. I'm gonna make my goddamn case. I'm going to take them out. And then it's more than that. It's like I'm going to take them out and I'm going to do it with the innocence first. Because that's the thing you got to get about mass murder types. You're not hunting down the guilty. That's too obvious. You're hunting down the innocent. That's the best protest. Think about it. Well, I don't want to think about it. Well, that's for sure. You bloody well don't want to think about it. But you better think about it. That's where you go when you take that criticism of being approach. It's like you don't get to do that unless you want to end up there. It's bad. So what do you do instead? Stop doing stupid things. Stop lying. Stop making things worse. Stop making yourself weak. Even in a day, you'll see that you have choices in front of you, and sometimes you don't know what to do. It's okay, you're ignorant. Maybe you make a mistake. Whatever. That's just ignorance. Malevolence is when you know what you shouldn't do. And you do it anyways. People do that all the time. And that's arrogance. That's I'll get away with it. It's deceit. Because you're lying to yourself about whether you should do this or not. You know you shouldn't. And then it's resentment because, well, it's like, I'm going to do this bad thing because that'll teach the people, that'll teach God to treat me this way. That's the terrible trinity. Deceit, arrogance, resentment. Chase those out of your life. Meaning is what you have to buttress yourself against the tragedy of life. Despite the fact that you're a fragile, damaged, mortal creature, you found something to do that announced itself as worthwhile. That's meaning. It's an instinct. It's a deep, deep instinct. It's maybe the deepest instinct. It's like a form of vision. Meaning tells you when you're in the right place. And the right place is between chaos and order. And those are real places. Your hemispheres, your right hemisphere is roughly evolved, let's say, to deal with things you don't understand. That's chaos. And your left is there to deal with things you do understand. You can't just stay with the things you do understand, because you already understand them. And you can't just stay with what you don't understand, because then you're lost. And you need to be in the middle of those two. And you can tell when you're in the middle, because everything lines up. Play that game across time, it doesn't work. It sends you down. Because you're sacrificing the future for the present. Meaning doesn't do that. Meaning says, I'm here where I should be. And you can't tell why, it's just that everything is right. You get this physiological sense. Right place, right time. Right conversation. So you follow this meaningful path. That's your buttress against the tragedy that produces resentment and malevolence. This meaning is the antidote to that. That's the fundamental religious truth. Life is suffering. That's true. There's malevolence. That's true. Meaning is the antidote to that. Yes, people say, well, meaning isn't real. It's like, no, that's wrong. It's actually the most real thing. It might even be more real than suffering and evil. Suffering and evil. It's possible. This isn't right thing. It's not an idea. It's a, because we're in time and space, right? And a place is a place, you know, 3 dimensions of space, but it's also, and when the place and the time are set up properly, you're in the right place, and your brain is telling you that, your being is telling you that. The purpose of profound religious contemplation, profound philosophical contemplation, is to learn how to be in the right place at the right time, all the time. From the Gospel of Thomas, which was discovered in like 1957, and it says, "The kingdom of God is spread out before the eyes of men, but men do not see it." And that's kind of what it's referring to. There are times when you're in the right place at the right time, and then you're where you should be, and you're not really trained to notice that, because it isn't something we ever talk about. It's like, you're in the right place at the right time. Okay, why? What did I do right? What did I do? I need to do more of that. So maybe it's only half an hour a week when you first start noticing. And then maybe with 3 months of practice, you can get it up to like an hour a day. And then maybe you can get it up to 4 hours a day. And God only knows where you could get it if you keep practicing, you know. You can be there. We don't know what the upper limit of that is.
One way of conceptualizing yourself is that you're one speck of dust among 7 billion. And when you conceptualize yourself that way, you might think, well, what difference does it make what I say or do? And that's actually quite convenient for you, because if it doesn't matter what you say or do, then you don't have any responsibility and you can do whatever you want. The price you pay for that is a bit of nihilism, but if you don't have to shoulder any responsibility, that's a small price to pay. The other way of looking at it, and this is actually the accurate way of looking at it, is that you're in a network. You're a node in a network, and so you can do a little bit of arithmetic very rapidly and just figure out how powerful you are. You know 1,000 people. They know 1,000 people. That means that you're one person away from 1 million people and 2 persons away from 1 billion people, and you're the center of that network. And now the way networks work is that information propagates in a network manner. So don't underestimate the power of your speech. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Tell the truth. 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 Please don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Please don't lie. That's a start. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, all right, I'm going to say what I think, stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am. I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. Now, the reason you think that, that's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. Tell the truth. 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 Please don't lie. there's a balance of risks. It's like you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you. Say what you think carefully. Pay attention to your words. But it's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. In the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. Tell the truth. 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 Well, police don't lie, and that's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Well, police don't lie, and that's a start.
You think, well, I'll lie and I'll get away with it. It's like, no, you won't. You cannot get away with warping the structure of being. It's like, well, I can lie and get away with it. It's like, I see. Here's your theory. There's all this reality around you that you don't comprehend at all. And there's not that much of you. There's a lot of it. And you're going to do something that isn't in harmony with that. And it's going to work. That's your theory. What you want to do is you want to enter into a conversation so that you come out wiser than you went in. The best example of this is when you're having an argument with your intimate partner, let's say, because you're going to want to win. So then you got to think, okay, well, wait a second, we better sort out what winning means here. So let's say that you're more verbally fluent than your partner and more treacherous. So you can win. That doesn't mean you're right, first of all. Winning when you're wrong is a really bad idea. Because then you think you're right, and you're not. And then maybe the person can see things you can't, but can't verbalize them quite as well. Well, you might want to listen. Just there's the possibility that they're trying to tell you how not to run headlong into a brick wall. There's some possibility of that. And so maybe you even have to help them form it. It's like, okay, I don't get exactly what you're saying. I don't get exactly why you're annoyed. I'm not sure exactly what you want me to do to change it. Let's get this clear. And then I'm going to think about it. Like, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I'm going to see if possibly you're right. I'm not going to roll over, because I would rather you weren't right. I'm not going to change. But I am going to listen. I would rather not run headlong into a brick wall if I don't have to. And so that's the idea with the conversation. So in Genesis, one of the things God has Adam do first. So God makes the world by speaking. Okay, so that's the first thing to think about. You're supposed to think in a sophisticated way about this. The idea is that there's some integral relationship between communication and the structure of being. It's part of the role that consciousness plays in the world, whatever that role is. Language takes the chaos and makes it into things. And so God has Adam name all the animals. They're not even really real until they have names. Well, let's say that you're having a rough patch in your relationship, and you don't know why. It's unnameable. Is it real? Well, yeah. It's manifesting itself in a physiological discomfort. Then you talk about it and you name it. It goes from this blurry thing that's kind of potential to go snap. And then it's this thing. That's a horrible thing. It's like a little poisonous thing, but it's not a whole foggy cloud of potential poison. It's like this little sharp poison thing. And then you think, okay, it's real. It's a little monster. It's little, at least. And now probably we can do something about it if we can admit to it. So it's this precision. Because the unnameable is far more terrifying than the nameable. No matter how terrible the actuality is, it's rarely as terrible as your imagination. Because your imagination, like, it's an old thing. It's seen a lot of terrible things in the history of life. It can put monsters everywhere. And so it's almost always better. It might be better without exception to name the thing, no matter how terrible it is. And if you can't name it, what that means is you're telling yourself that you're so terrified that you can't bring your attention to bear on it. You're the loser, instantly. If it's so terrifying that you cannot face it, it's won. The worst way of demonizing people is to not be able to say anything about them, because then God only knows what. They're unspeakable. Bring everything out of the realm of the unspeakable. That's the worship of the logo in many ways. That's a very deep idea in our culture. The deepest idea of our culture is that logos is creative, and what it makes is good. That's God at the beginning of time. That's the idea. Is that to bring things out of the murk is a good thing. You don't mess with that, man, not unless you want murk. You don't mess with that. It's the most sacred principle of Western civilization. My daughter was very ill. My daughter was very ill. She had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and when she was between the ages of 14 and 16, it first destroyed her hip, which had to be replaced, and then it destroyed the ankle on her other leg, which had to be replaced. She walked around for 2 years on broken legs, and she was taking massive doses of opiates and could hardly stay awake, and she had this advanced autoimmune disease, which produced all sorts of other symptoms that were just as bad as the joint degeneration, but which are harder to describe. And so it's just bloody brutal. You know, and as a test of your faith, there's almost nothing that's more direct than a serious illness inflicted upon an innocent child. But what to do in a situation like that? Because everyone is going to have a situation like that in some sense. You know, you'll be faced with illness in the people that you love. And one of the things you do when you're overwhelmed by crisis is you shorten your time frame. You can't think about next month. Maybe you can't even bloody well think about next week, or maybe not even tomorrow. Because now is just so overwhelming that that's all there is. And that's what you do. You cut your time frame back until you can cope with it. And if it's not the next week that you see how to get through, then it's the next day. And if it's not the next day, then it's the next hour. And if it's not the next hour, then it's the next minute. And you know, people are very, very, very tough. And it turns out that if you face things, you can put up with a lot more than you think you can put up with, and you can do it without becoming corrupted. And she did recover because she figured out what was wrong with her and then took the necessary steps to fix it, which is nothing short of a bloody miracle. You have to be alert when you're suffering. You have to be alert to the beauty in life, the unexpected beauty in life. There's this cat that lives across the street from us called Ginger. Cats really aren't domesticated, technically speaking. They're still wild animals, but they kind of like people. God only knows why, but they do, you know? And so Ginger will come wandering over and let you pet her. You know, you have to look for that little bit of sparkling crystal in the darkness when things are bad. You have to look and see where things are still beautiful. You narrow your time frame. You be grateful for what you have. That can get you through some very dark times, and maybe even successfully if you're lucky. But even if unsuccessfully, then maybe it's only tragic and not absolute hell. You can do that, you know. In the worst situation, you can make it only tragic and not hell. There's nothing worse at a deathbed than to see the people there fighting. The death is bad enough, but you can take that, as terrible as it is, and make it into something that's absolutely unbearable. And maybe I think, and this is sort of what I closed the book with, if we didn't all attempt to make terrible things even worse than they are, then maybe we could tolerate terrible things that we have to put up with in order to exist. And maybe we could make the world into a better place, you know? And it's what we should be doing and what we could be doing because we don't have anything better to do. And that's what the book is about. And that's the end of 12 Rules for Life.
The first chapter I have in my book is called Stand Up Straight with Your Shoulders Back, and it's an injunction to be combative, not least to further your career, let's say, but also to adopt a stance of ready engagement with the world and to reflect that in your posture.
I kind of have an affinity for lobsters. When a lobster loses a fight, he kind of crunches down, so he looks smaller. When he wins a fight, he stretches out, looks bigger. And so he's signaling to other lobsters the tally of his victory. So you think, well, so what? The lobster runs on serotonin, neurochemical. And if the lobster loses, the serotonin levels go down. And if he wins, the serotonin levels go up. And when the serotonin levels go up, he stretches out. And he's a confident lobster. And one of the consequences of that is if a lobster loses a battle and you give him the equivalent of antidepressant, then he stretches out and he'll go fight again. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, 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 stand up straight with your shoulders back. So antidepressants work on lobsters. And you think, well, who cares? It's like, no. You don't get it. We diverged from lobsters from an evolutionary perspective 350 million years ago, and it's the same circuit. It's absolutely unbelievable. And that shows you how deep inside you, how basic, how primordial that circuit is in you. It's sizing other people up and looking at where they fit in the hierarchy. The idea of the hierarchy is at least 350 million years old. And so I read that and I think, well, so much for the idea that human hierarchies are a sociocultural construct. It's like, no, that's wrong. It's not just a little bit wrong, it's unbelievably wrong. It's mind-bogglingly wrong. Lobsters have hierarchies. That's a third of a billion years ago. Okay, that's not a social construction. It's part of being itself. And if you only see a hierarchy as power and tyranny, then you're looking at the world wrong.
Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, 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 stand up straight with your shoulders back.
So this basically says, I'm open to the world. But it also says, I can handle being open to the world. So it signifies confidence and confidence. The deepest Christian idea is that you should accept the vulnerability of being. That's the acceptance of the crucifixion. You're at the X where all the suffering takes place. Are you going to whine about that? No, and get resentful and bitter about it? Or are you going to say, bring it on? And handle it, no matter what it is. And the idea is that if you can do that, you will transcend the tragedy. And it's like, well, could that be true? Well, you admire the courageous, so well, how courageous can you get? That's the question. How courageous can you get? Well, you practice.
Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, 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 stand up straight with your shoulders back.
You want to present yourself to the world in a manner that doesn't disgrace you in some sense. You don't want to disgrace yourself because the consequence of disgrace is emotional dysregulation. More pain, less positive emotion. And so the best way to present yourself is to stand up forthrightly and to stretch out, and to occupy some space. If you straighten up and you present yourself in that manner, then other people are more likely to take you seriously. And that means they'll start treating you as if you're a number one lobster instead of a number 10 lobster. Because one of the general rules of thumb about how to be successful is to confront things that frighten you forthrightly and with courage. And that's kind of a universal strategy for success. And so that's what the first chapter is about. If you have a friend and you tell them bad news, they're actually sad, and you can tell them. They will listen. They'll listen. They'll take the damn pain, and they won't tell you about some worst thing that happened to them, defensively say. Or they won't secretly be happy that you got knocked off your pedestal. They'll listen. And then the other thing is if you have a friend and something good happens to you, they're happy.
Like you have an ethical responsibility to take care of yourself, you have an ethical responsibility to surround yourself with people who have the courage and faith and wisdom to wish you well when you've done something good and to stop you when you're doing something destructive. And if your friends aren't like that, then they're not your friends. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Friends with people who want the best for you. People don't exactly understand that it's okay morally to choose people that are trying to help you be better. And to shy away from people who are going to drag you down. Two drowned people is not an improvement over one. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Make friends with people who want the best for you. someone else's ship. Now you think that's pretty harsh and pretty rude. You can't abandon a friendly need. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it is appropriate for you to look at your social surround and to make decisions. If you have a person who's hurting you and who won't quit and who's pulling you down, that is not necessary.
Make friends with people who want the best for you.
You go with people that are trying to elevate you.
Make friends with people who want the best for you.
You're not obligated to associate with people who are making your life worse.
Make friends with people who want the best for you.
You are obligated not to associate with people who are trying to damage the structure of being. Your being, the family being, social being, all of that. Like, no. Wrong. Move away.
Akira.
The God.
He's got clout.
These are the buttons for the user interface. These are the buttons.
Akira.
The God.
He's got clout.
These are the buttons for the user interface. These are the buttons for the user interface. First, you must accept the frame, at least as a filter. You should accept that systems work better than goals. Systems work better than goals. Talent stacking, affirmations, the mating instinct, fear, curiosity, novelty, contrast, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, the fake because, hazing leading, aspiration, association, pattern recognition, visualization, pattern recognition, visualization. These are the buttons for the user interface. These are the buttons for the user interface. First, you must accept the frame, at least as a filter. You should accept that systems work better than goals. Systems work better than goals. Talent stacking, affirmations, the mating instinct, fear, curiosity, novelty, contrast, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, fake because, hazing leading, aspiration, association, pattern recognition, visualization, pattern recognition, visualization. These are the buttons for the user interface. 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 This is my lesson. I hope this was useful. This is the sort of lesson that might not change you tonight, but it's never going to leave you. But it's never going to leave you. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You're all changed. You don't know it yet. And this will become sort of a, let's say, a framework that you now have added to your mental map. And now when you see things that fit that framework, it will get stronger over time. And so you'll see that this view of the world will take root, and then every time you compare it to the old way you saw, you're going to say to yourself, wow, is that a coincidence? Because this new way of looking at the world just feels like it predicts better. But I'll keep an eye on it. So this will get stronger and stronger over time, and maybe never stop getting stronger. These are the buttons for the user interface. 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 Feel free to refer back to this often, and I think you've got everything you need now to author your own life. You're no longer a victim of reality. You are no longer the subject of reality. You're now an author. You're now an author. You're no longer a victim of reality. You are no longer the subject of reality. You're now an author. Some of you are already authors, and now you're better authors. And those of you who didn't know you could be an author of your reality, well, you just found out. And I will leave you on that, and you can have a terrific night tonight. And the rest of your life is looking good.
Do I have a message? Yes, I do. Here's my message. As scary as the world is, and it is merely a ride. And the amusement park of the universe is merely a ride. It has its thrills, it has its chills, it has its ups, it has its downs. And some people have known it. We think it's real because that's how powerful our minds are, but it's not. It's a ride. And some people have known it. They've come here and told us it's just a ride. We killed those people. We love it off the ride. But it's just a ride. Since you know it, some people are tired of the ups and downs and the thrills and chills and the birds and the quiet. They have to be told it's just a ride. We'll fold them.
I've really been trying to make sense of this, because, well, what the hell's going on? Why am I selling out 3,000 person auditoriums? I use the stage, let's say, as a opportunity in real time to think. I've been thinking, well, if you're surfing, you don't confuse yourself with the wave. The wave. The wave. That's a real mistake. You might be on top of the wave, but you're not. The wave. The wave. The wave. That's a real mistake. You might be on top of the wave, but you're not. The wave. I think this long-form discussion and the public hunger for that is best conceptualized like that. There's a technological revolution. It's a deep one. Online video and audio. Immediately accessible to everyone, all over the world. It's turned the spoken word into a tool that has the same reach as the printed word. So it's a Gutenberg revolution in the domain of video and audio. And it might be even deeper than the original Gutenberg revolution, because it isn't obvious how many people can read, but lots of people can listen. The wave. The wave. The wave. You might be on top of the wave. The wave. The wave. The wave. You might be on top of the wave. The wave. I mean, you got a little bit of that with TV, right? And you got a little bit of it with radio. But there was bandwidth limitations that were really stringent, especially in TV, where you could get 30 seconds if you were lucky, and 6 minutes if you were stellar, to elucidate a complicated argument. So you can't do that. Everything gets compressed to a kind of oversimplified entertainment. But now, all of a sudden, we have this forum for long-form discussion. Real long-form discussion. Turns out that everyone is way smarter than we thought. The wave. The wave. The wave. That's a real mistake. You might be on top of the wave. The wave. The wave. The wave. You might be on top of the wave. The wave. The people, the forefront of this, are being cascaded forward like a surfer on a giant wave on this technological transformation. It's necessary to keep your ego under control. With regards to the people coming to see me, the proper attitude towards that, and I think this is true for any performer, is gratitude. You bloody well be happy those people are there, and you should never think there's something spectacularly special about yourself that's attracting these people, and that somehow you're above them and they're your fans, or there's this real power differential, even though that sort of manifests itself because people are so happy to see you. That's a dangerous pathway, and I truly am ridiculously overwhelmed and grateful and happy and pleased that all these people show up.
Does complacency come? Does complacency come with age? And do I have the urge to back off? Negative. Negative. Back off? Not happening. I hear that I'm over 40 and I'm pushing 50. Whatever. Bring it. Back off? Negative. Not happening. In fact, listening to this. Here's the deal. No complacency. No complacency. No backing off. No slack whatsoever. Fight. Fight that ticking clock with everything you got. So, like the end of a hard day, you can put your head down with ease, satisfied that you're giving your best. Fight. Fight that ticking clock with everything you got. Fight. Fight that ticking clock with everything you got. 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 Fight. Fight that ticking clock with everything you got. Everything you got. Everything you got. Does complacency
He's got clout.
Finding out what you're doing wrong is not a pleasant experience, and it means that you have to sacrifice part of yourself. Usually a burned out, stupid, bitter, corrupt, arrogant, nasty, vengeful part of yourself, but nonetheless part that you like. I think that room for those incremental improvements exists within everyone's grasp. And I think that it's a humble thing to do, to ask how you could improve incrementally without interfering with anyone else, like it's your problem, not theirs. But I think that the consequences of maintained incremental improvement are anything but incremental. You get compound interest on incremental improvement. Another rule in the New Testament called the Matthew Principle. Economists use it. The rule is, to those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. It's actually a description of the way the world works. You know that if you've ever played Monopoly. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. And there's a reason for that, that's a deep reason. And it's a very harsh rule. Because it means as you start to that you will wander further off the path increases non-linearly. And that's a terrible thing to know. As you wander towards the edge, the probability that you'll fall off the cliff increases. And that's statistical justification for the concept of hell. But as you improve, the probability that each improvement will produce a further improvement increases. And so perhaps the downside is the cataclysmic catastrophe that you can engage upon if you reproduce your moral failings. But the upside is that each improvement produces an increment in the probability of the next improvement. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. It's actually a description of the way the world works. You know that if you've ever played Monopoly. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. If you're a behavioral psychologist, and I am a behavioral psychologist, what you do is you help a person establish their aim, then you break down what they're trying to do into attainable units. The general consequence of that is that every time they manage an accomplishment, they get a little stronger in character, they get a little bit more confident in their ability, they get a little bit less racked with self-disgust, they get a little bit more hopeful about the future, and they get more confident that they can make another change. And if you're patient, and you have to be patient with yourself that way, it's like you reward those incremental improvements and you don't get all cynical about them, and you think, okay, just imagine what would happen if you kept doing that every week for 10 years. And the answer to that is, things would be so much better for you that you can't even imagine it. With that much improvement. Or maybe even with half that much improvement. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. It's actually a description of the way the world works. You know that if you've ever played Monopoly. To those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. So that's a very good way of progressing.
Everyone vaguely knows that they want to be wealthy, but they don't have a good set of principles to do it by. Wealth is the thing that you really want. Akira. Wealth is assets that earn while you sleep. Wealth is the factory with the robots that's cranking out. Wealth is the computer program that's running at night that's serving other customers. Wealth is even money in the bank that is being reinvested into other assets and into other businesses. Even a house can be a form of wealth because you can rent it out. Wealth is businesses and assets that can earn while you sleep. Wealth is businesses and assets that can earn while you sleep. But really the reason you want wealth is because it buys you freedom. The purpose of wealth
something in the future for the work that you did in the past. Here's a little IOU, let's call that money. Wealth is businesses and assets that you earn while you sleep. Wealth is businesses and assets that you earn while you sleep. There are fundamentally two huge games in life that people play. One is the money game, because money is not going to solve all your problems, but it's going to solve all your money problems. And people know that, and they realize that, so they want to make money. But at the same time, many of them deep down believe that they can't make it. They don't want any wealth creation to happen. They sort of virtue signal by attacking the whole enterprise by saying, well, making money is evil, you shouldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. They're actually playing the other games in the status game. They're trying to be high status in the eyes of other people watching. Status is just your ranking in the social hierarchy. Status is just your ranking in the social hierarchy. So wealth is not a zero-sum game. Everybody in the world can have a house. Because you have a house doesn't take away from my ability to have a house. If anything, the more houses that are built, the easier it becomes to build houses. The more we know about building houses, the more people that can have houses. So wealth is a very positive sum game. Status, on the other hand, is a zero-sum game. It's a very old game. We've been playing it since monkey tribes, and it's hierarchical. Who's number one, who's number two, who's number three. And for number three to move to number two has to move out of that slot. So status is a zero-sum game. Politics is an example of a status game. Even sports is an example of a status game. To be the winner, there must be a loser. I don't fundamentally love status games. They play an important role in our society, so we figure out who's in charge. But fundamentally, you play them because they're a necessary evil. Wealth is businesses and assets that you earn while you sleep. Wealth is businesses and assets that you earn while you sleep. But really the reason you want wealth is because it buys you freedom. The purpose of wealth is freedom. Wealth is wealth is a subtle competition going on between status and wealth. For example, when journalists attack rich people, they're really bidding for status. They're saying, no, the people are more important, and I, the journalist, represents the people, and therefore I am more important. The problem is that by playing these status games, to win a status game, you have to put somebody else down. That's why you should avoid status games in your life, because they make you into an angry, combative person. You're always fighting to put other people down, to put yourself and the people that you like up. Just realize that most of the times when you're trying to create wealth, you're actually getting attacked by someone else, and they're trying to look like a goody two-shoes, but really what they're doing is they're trying to up their own status at your expense. They're just playing a different game, and it's a worse game. It's a zero-sum game instead of a positive-sum game.
Everything's a scam and a neon sign in my apartment. It's because I think that's the most optimistic message you can think of every day. So I wanted to remind myself of that every morning when I woke up.
And the reason why I think it's optimistic is that you see all these different problems, right? All these things in the world. And you're like, well, I don't understand that thing. I don't understand.
In my case,
longevity research and science and hardware. I don't understand any of these things in a deeply technical way. I want to affect them. A lot of the reasons why people don't go into different fields is they think, well, there's this kind of expert status around this field, which means I can't ever infiltrate it. And the thing that I want to remember every day is that expertise is a scam.
Expertise is a scam.
It's power hierarchy that's been created within an industry to prevent other people from being able to go and get into it. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Academia is a scam. Venture capital is a scam. Everything's a fucking scam. Right? But if you realize that, then you can do anything. Why I think remembering everything is a scam is important is that it boosts your self-efficacy to remind yourself that if everything's a scam, then if you have high integrity and you want to go solve a problem, it's probably the case that it'll take you pretty far. Take you pretty far. Take you pretty far. Like more far than trying to play a traditional game, which is a scam. So, to me, everything is a scam is not a negative thing. It's a reminder to just play the game. Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Academia is a scam. Venture capital is a scam. Everything's a fucking scam. Right? But if you realize that, then you can do anything. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Academia is a scam. Venture capital is a scam. Everything's a fucking scam. Right? But if you realize that, then you can do anything. And you can do anything. You can do anything. You can do anything.
Gratitude. On that 400 trillion and one thing, I'm grateful. Straight up, like I don't know what to say. Like you might have not been born, right? Like your dad could have been late to the apartment that day. On some real shit. Like I don't think people contextualize perspective. Like what? Like you're alive. Like you're alive. You could have been a tree. You could have like right? Like this is cool. Like life is good. Life is good. Like it's cool to have one. It's cool to have one. Life is good. Life is good. Like it's cool to have one. That's one of the biggest things for me is being the bigger person. I hate conflict. Ironically, like I'm a tough guy when I have the mic and nobody else can talk, but in real life, I like happiness and vibes and like I've eaten shit my whole life. Kids stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from me in the liquor store. Like I found a way for him not to go to jail for a long time. Like, you know, like just being the bigger person has been a core principle of mine. Not valuing money over family and like happiness has been huge. Fuck money. Like really. Fuck money. You cannot care about money more when you don't care about what people think about your money. You know? Life is good. Life is good. Like it's cool to have one. It's cool to have one. Life is good. Life is good. Like it's cool to have one. That's the one. Patience. Holy shit, I'm gonna live 4 more full lives. And no matter how crazy what I think about right now is, and like what I want to accomplish on and off the field, I got 4 fucking lives to do it. You guys know Grey Goose? The guy who invented that as an entrepreneur invented it at 78. 78 years old. You know? That's life. Like, you could do everything wrong, have every dream you've ever had fucked up, blame it on other people, the girl fucked it up, that injury fucked it up, the coach fucked it up, blame everybody, have everything go wrong, be 57 years old, and still have fucking 40 years to make it right. It's crazy, honestly. Like if there was some crazy new drug that I could like inject in you that gave you perspective of time, that's the drug I would give you. Straight up. Life is good. Life is good. Like it's cool to have one. It's cool to have one. Life is good. This is cool. Life is good. Like it's cool to have one. That's the one. Life is good. Life is good. Like it's cool to have one. It's cool to have one. Life is good. Life is good. This is cool. Like it's cool to have one. That's the one. It makes you optimistic. People are sitting here dwelling already. Dwelling already. Fuck, I shouldn't have come to Rutgers. Fucking knew it. Of course there's people thinking that. Like that's just real life. Dwelling already. Haven't even fucking started. Man, that's what I want to change.
With the things that senses experience, especially those that entice us with pleasure or frighten us with pain, or are loudly trumpeted by pride. To understand those things, how stupid, contemptible, grimy, decaying, dead they are. That's what our intellectual powers are for. Hey. Speak with the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. Speak with the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. Understand what those people really amount to, whose opinions and voices constitute fame, and what dying is. And if you look at it in the abstract and break down your imaginary ideas of it by logical analysis, you realize that it's nothing but a process of nature, which only children can be scared of. And not just a process of nature, but a necessary one. Speak of the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. Speak of the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. 'Cause the tongue and vanish. The objects in the world and the memory of them in time. Of them in time. grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does.
This way back. First off, everybody says, oh, ideas are a dime a dozen, execution is everything. And they just assume that at some point they'll be walking around and like lightning will strike them and they'll think, oh my gosh, people should share cars and I'll make an app in the middle to connect people with cars and I'll call it Uber. No, ideas don't really work like that. Nor does execution work the way most people think. People think, I'm just going to take this great idea and now I'm going to do it. The doing it can happen in 1,000 different ways. People don't realize there's a whole spectrum of execution ranging from really, really bad so that an idea will fail, or really, really good so that even a bad idea might have a chance for success. Having ideas is like a muscle. Having ideas is like a muscle. Idea muscle. Having ideas is like a muscle. Idea muscle. I'll try to practice having 10 ideas a day. Idea muscle. Doesn't have to be a good idea or a bad idea. Idea muscle. But it keeps that idea muscle in practice. If you're sick and you lie in bed for 2 weeks, you might actually need physical therapy to walk again. Your leg muscles atrophy that fast. It's the same thing with ideas. If you don't have ideas every day, your idea muscle is not going to get bigger. It might atrophy. And so I try to practice. I'll come up with a topic and I'll try to practice having 10 ideas a day around. Each day will be a different topic, but I'll try to have 10 good ideas around that topic. Now, they won't be good ideas because you can't have 3,650 good ideas a year. But I try to make sure they're as good as they possibly could be. I've been doing this ever since I wanted to network, and I'm not a very good networker. I wanted to ask my heroes, can I buy you a cup of coffee and pick your brain? So I wrote to 20 people. They didn't even say no. None of them responded. Why would they respond? Warren Buffett's not going to say, hold everything. Clear my schedule, Gladys. He's never going to even respond to me. He's going to think I'm an idiot. So then I started researching everyone's business, and I started writing down 10 ideas for Warren Buffett's business, 10 ideas for this person's business, 10 ideas for this person's business. And then I would send those ideas to the people, and I would say, hey, you don't have to respond to this. I don't want anything, but I really admire you and your business. Here's 10 things where I think your business could improve. And then I started getting responses, and it actually changed my life, some of those responses. And so I started doing it every single day, without fail. Since then, idea muscle. Having ideas is like a muscle. Idea muscle. I'll try to practice having 10 ideas a day. Idea muscle. Doesn't have to be a good idea or a bad idea. Idea muscle. But it keeps that idea muscle in practice.